Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Creative Warrior online programs powered by Vidyadan. Here we are back with yet another wonderful session, which will be a fusion of storytelling and communication. So this is Storycation, where Ms. Deepa is going to discuss storytelling and communication, which is really a very interesting topic. So before inviting Ms. Deepa Kiran, let me tell you a little bit about her. She is a founder at Story Arts Foundation. She's an international storyteller, national award-winning educationalist, international award-winning actor, filmmaker, TEDx speaker, writer, and trainer. She has already reached over 1 million people across 80 countries with her work. So let's welcome her here today and let's learn about what exactly this fusion storycation is. Deepa Kiran ma'am, you're most welcome on this platform of Media and Entertainment Skills Council.
Thank you, Pooja. Namaskar. Thank you very much. Delighted to be here with the Creative Warriors series.
Thank you.
Yes.
So what is this fusion? Storytelling and communication. The storycation is a new word for all of us.
Oh, yes. Storycation is, in fact, our trademarked registered concept, which is, as you said, it's new. And in a sense, it's very old. It is really about communication and how communication can be strengthened with the power of a very specific skill which works, which is storytelling. So, how can we tell stories and how can we bring stories into our communication and make it that much more powerful so that we are storycating? So, there's storycation and not just communication.
Oh, wonderful. So let's hear it from you. I'm sure you have some wonderful presentation to show. So you have all the rights and I'll be here at the back end learning from you. And of course, in case of any support is needed. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pooja. So lovely always to interact with youth, to interact with the students. I teach undergrad students, so it's always exciting to connect with you all once again. Let me start by sharing a story, right? Shobha Narayanan, along with her husband, was trying to zero in on a purchase of a minivan. They'd done all the research in the market, checked out with friends, looked up the budgets and the features and everything. And they went to the showroom to company A, which everyone had recommended. The features were good. It was a little expensive, but that was the one. Shobha and her husband test drove the minivan. They loved it. It drove like a dream. But just to be conscientious customers, they decided to also go to the other end of town to company B's minivan just to check it out. They went to company B. They went to the showroom, checked out the vehicle, but this time they'd already decided, right? So they went in like very confident customers. After seeing the company B's minivan, they said to the saleswoman there, who was there in a dark blue trouser and light blue shirt, said, why should we buy your company's minivan when the competitor's minivan has as good features? The saleswoman looked at them, gave a smile, and said, ma'am, I completely agree with you. The features of our car and of the competitor minivan, both are the same. But the only difference is the competitor's minivan looks like a rat, and ours, it looks like a racehorse that you can drive into the jungle. That's all she said. As Shobha and her husband went back home, all they had images were of this racehorse and driving it into the jungle. Have you ever thought of car ads, which often show you mountains and winding roads and jungles? That was it. Try as they did, the image did not leave their mind. The next day, they went back to company A, looked at the minivan, and all they could see was a rat. So finally, they decided to purchase company B's minivan, the racehorse. What had happened? What had the saleswoman done? She had simply told a story. She had told a story through images. And through that story, she had hit not here, but here. Images and that which goes right into the heart. These are the elements of a story because that's what makes a story memorable. Think about it. Take a minute. I'd like each of you to think about your favorite film or favorite song or favorite advertisement. What comes to you right away? Certainly some specific image, and there's something that's also perhaps happening here in your heart in association with the image, right? This really is what Storycation is all about. Bringing in the element of storytelling into your communication. Because that's what stays. I don't recommend storytelling. I don't recommend Storycation as it's another skill, pick it up. I recommend it because it works. It truly does. Finally, all of us respond to images. We respond to that which tugs at our heart, right? We respond to that which stays with us. And that is what storytelling and Storycation offer, right? I'd like you to take a moment to think about this whole story of the minivan purchase, of ads that come to your mind, of the films that come to your mind, of stories that comes to your mind, songs that are your favorites and that you recollect. I recommend all of these and I suggest all of these absolutely from experience, not just because this is storytelling and this is something that should be done, right? I am a storyteller. I work with teachers. I am in the field of communication, public speaking, keynote speeches and talks. I write articles about what I believe in. I act, I make films. And for all of these, I find the common thread, absolutely common thread, is storytelling. Infusing the content of a story and using the style of a story, both ways, in terms of the matter, in terms of the presentation. These are two different things. In both, we can bring in storytelling in our communication and make it that much more effective. Of course, when we're talking about storycation, as in storytelling and communication for a sale, like in the story I just shared at the start, the other factors are assumed to be in place, which means the product is actually good, the pricing is right, everything else that has to be in place is in place. Given that all of that is in place, the story can make a difference in persuading, in influencing your customer, your client, your colleague, your mother, father, child, brother, friend, prospective investor, whomever. Persuading and influencing, because it has the ability to hit both at the imagination, at a possibility, and fire the heart. Both happen together with content of a story and with the style of a story. So if you go back to what this saleswoman said, did you notice that she did not claim that, oh no, our minivan is much better, it has this, that? No. She didn't even attempt that. She simply said, yes, I agree that the features of that minivan and this one are equally good. All she did was throw in the image. And certainly there must have been some truth to the possibility of that story. So she could throw it in so effectively as well. So I urge you to think about stories in communication, to think about images, to think about how through the plot, through the dialogue, through the style of delivery, we can persuade, we can influence another. Now, whatever may be your profession, whether you are in communication design, whether you make films, whether you make advertisements, whether you sell, whether you are in PR, marketing, each one of us eventually at some point or the other requires to persuade and to influence someone else. Don't you agree? You might have to influence them to think along the lines that you want. You might have to influence them to take action on a certain thing that you would like them to in a certain manner. Thought and action are different kinds, decision making are different kinds of influences that you can have on people, for which you have to persuade and persuade and persuade. So let's look at the different ways in which we persuade people, right? One is simple, pure logic. Okay, you want to convince somebody of the fact that your idea is good and is worth pursuing and is the correct one. And you use all the logic and all the rationale for it. Would you be able to give me an example? Would anybody like to give an example of where you just use your logic and you use your rationale to persuade, to convince the other person? Any
Usually,
thoughts?
whenever I'm like getting involved. Usually, whenever you are trying to convince someone on emotional grounds, no, not just finances, without giving the numbers, when you are trying to convince on the emotional grounds or the human grounds, then you need this art for sure.
Right, right, right. Absolutely, absolutely. We certainly need it when we are convincing on emotional grounds. And when we are not, one of the ways we do it is we attempt with logic, right? For example, you might say, oh, the best way to reach that place is by a train, and the cost of the train is so much. But if you're going to take a flight, it's going to cost you so much. And then you also have to take a taxi to the outskirts of the city. So imagine that, right? For example, you will calculate and you will show the logic and the rationale behind a particular idea. That is one way of persuading. Another way of persuading is giving a scientific evidence. In science, that's always the case, right? If as a person who is doing some scientific work, who has come up with some material, some invention, some discovery, I need to show the evidence. I need to show the proof, and proof by certain parameters. So once I give that evidence, then I can persuade, then I can convince, then I can influence the others. So these are the usual ways. And when all of this fails, is usually when we come to the emotional. And in the emotional story, right? But instead, if we can combine, or if we can begin, or if we can somewhere consciously make a little space even for the story to persuade and influence, then we are having much stronger or higher chances of any kind of approval. Again, let me quote another example. This is an example of Rakesh, who was in the IT industry. And Rakesh had this had come up with this very interesting concept. Okay, he was working on this software which would identify customer preferences, but particularly in the sector of groceries. With reference to groceries, he was creating a software that could identify customer preferences and give this information to other organizations like Amazon, which finds such information helpful. So he went to his boss and he said, "I have this idea, and I really wish we could do something with it. We could take it forward, we could create this product." And the boss said, yeah, idea sounds good. If you can manage to convince any client of us, then great. So Rakesh sat with it, crunching numbers, putting together data, finding out all the others who have been creating such software, because they have been creating. There are others who have created the software. Finding out all companies who are taking the services of these softwares, because they are, like Amazon already has shopper preference software that they are accessing, and then trying to find out the unique feature, how come this stands out, putting down the statistics in place, data crunching numbers, everything done in place, presentations made, sent. Finally, they were able to get a meeting with a client. The client had come from overseas, and Rakesh found that all through, the client kept listening, but they seemed to be just hearing more than listening. Like it was chains and chains and chains of data going into them. And Rakesh was getting anxious. They're not asking me a single question. Worse, in between, they're looking at their phones so often, they're checking emails. And even worse, they have not once asked me the price of the product. Well, anyways, that ever so boring, uneventful meeting was done. He took out the clients to dinner. And as they sat over dinner, Rakesh knew that dinner done, wine and everything done, and this team is going to go back. At that point, as they were having dinner, Rakesh looked at John, let's call him John, and said, "You know, my grandfather, my grandfather's chain of restaurants may not have shut if he had a grocery preference software in his times." Now John is getting curious. And then you talk about how your grandfather's chain of restaurants was a dream which had to shut down. The story really could be that your grandfather actually had a restaurant, maybe not many. And maybe that is not the reason why you are passionate today. However, if in a very small way, a connection can be made to the heart, to an emotion, to a visual image, to be able to make another person see why you feel so connected to your project, why you are going to take responsibility for this project going forward, then certainly it would be able to excite the other person. I'm sharing an episode, an anecdote that is shared in the book of Katha by Shobha Narayanan, and this is her take on storytelling. I do certainly agree that it is possible to explore a story like this. But what is much, 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 much more important in all of this is to earnestly believe in your product, right? Earnestly have a worthwhile, fantastic product, right? And then a little bit of embellishment with story will be just the right embellishment to tip it all in your favor. And that's exactly what happened. John got so interested in the story. He wanted to know more about the restaurant. He wanted to know more about South Indian food. And from there, they had this entire discussion about food and preferences and how, as a child, he had seen and guessed what people liked, what people did not like. And that was an interest. And who knows, maybe it is. Maybe that is why the grocery preferences concept came up as a software idea. The story just served to give an emotional connect, a context, a rootedness, and a sense of accountability. It piqued the curiosity of John, for whom otherwise all those numbers, all those details first didn't mean anything, but now they had an emotional meaning to it. No wonder that Brené Brown says, maybe storytelling is data with a soul. I repeat that. Maybe storytelling is data with a soul. So we are not saying throw data out of the window. No. We are saying don't throw the soul and keep only the data. It doesn't help. Keep the data, but bring alive the soul of the data, which is storytelling, which is storycation. So here's an entirely different story for you. And in an entirely different style. This is the little one, a little detour, a break. Come, come, listen, listen, everybody, just for you I have a story. Come, 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 come. So, once upon a time, there lived a butter maker. He made his living by collecting butter from the churning of curd, as it was traditionally done. Now, this butter maker collected the butter, and he had an arrangement with a merchant out in the city. The last Sunday of every month, the butter maker would go to the merchant and he would give him butter in 1 kilo packets. In exchange, he would get 1 kilo of rice, 1 kilo of dal, 1 kilo of sugar. All right. This arrangement continued for many years until one day out of the blue, the merchant asked his assistant shopkeeper. He said, hey, just check if that 1 kilo butter is really 1 kilo or not, which that Shankar butter maker gives us. Huh? I never bothered to check all these years. How foolish of me. That's when the assistant quickly took out the balance. And on one side, he put the butter, one side, he put the 1 kilo weight, and the butter went up. The merchant was so angry. The assistant shopkeeper put 100 grams and then it balanced. Yes, that's right. It meant the butter maker was not giving 1 kilo packages of butter. Instead, he had been giving 900 grams only. 900 grams month after month, year after year. The merchant began to make the calculations and he was so furious and he said, I'm not going to spare this man when he comes this Sunday. The next Sunday, the butter maker came back, said, Salam sab, namaste, and he kept the butter there. Namaste, salam. Do your salam to the policeman, I say, in the thana. Sir, what happened? I have come to know all your stories. 900 grams instead of 1,000 grams you've been giving me month after month, year after year. I'll make the calculations. I'll see to it that you suffer in hell. Sir. What are you talking about? Why does the butter weigh 900 grams and not 1 kilo? Answer me. Sir, just a minute. I am a poor butter maker. You know that. I'm a very poor butter maker. I only have money to buy the balance, sir. In my house, I only have a balance. I don't have money to buy the baht, the 1 kilo weight. So, that first time you gave me that 1 kilo sugar, na, sir, I put that on one side and with that I weigh the butter, sir. This was the response of the butter maker. What do you think? What are your thoughts about this story?
So it started from the sugar. Oh, poor man.
So who should the merchant be angry with?
Everything begins from you. So it's you have to find the solution within yourself. Yes,
And
wonderful. Loved it.
right, thank you, Pooja. And just like the merchant, we we don't end up looking inward at all, right? We are constantly looking out. That's the problem. That's the one to fix. That's the person to fix, right? um, so this is a really fun story, and like Pooja was now sharing and reflecting on the story. This is what story offers us: a chance to reflect and to find out for ourselves. And that's what you want to give your listener. The best persuasion is almost a no persuasion. I repeat, the best persuasion is almost a no persuasion. When you tell a story, there's something in the story that will just click, that just hit at their heart, that'll make them think, that'll make them feel on their own. They don't feel like they've been told to. You've been telling them what to do, what to think. And that's when the audience responds even better. So let me again give a proverb to support what I've just said. Philip Pullman, highly renowned author. In fact, many of the best authors look up to Philip Pullman as a reference for writing skills. One of Philip Pullman's quotes is, "Thou shalt not is soon forgotten. Once upon a time stays forever." Thou shalt not is soon forgotten. Once upon a time stays forever. Right? By which he's implying that thou shalt not is like instructions. Instructions typically are forgotten. But once upon a time, which is a story, is remembered. A story stays. A story is received with a lot more openness. I will add to Philip Pullman's quote. Remember, as a child, and maybe even today, right? The moment we are said, don't do this, what do we want to do? Exactly that. How many children have burnt their hands? I'm sure you'll have so many episodes in your house, with the mother would have said, don't touch the pressure cooker, don't touch the ironing board, don't touch the flame. And as a little child, that's exactly what you would have done. The moment there is thou shalt not, it's not received, it's forgotten, it's rejected. But once upon a time, a story is received, it is thought about, and it is something that the person feels that, oh, I have found out from the story for myself. So that's the power of storycation. And going back to the first story of the saleswoman, that's exactly what she did, right? She threw this image. She threw a story of taking charge of your minivan, being in this racehorse that you can ride into the jungle, giving it an emotion, giving it an image, allowing you to receive. She did not say, you should go for this car because of this reason. This car is not like this because of this reason. No, it was a once upon a time and let you receive. So a story can just be an image, a very powerful image. A story can be a proverb. A story can be a little phrase told at the right time to the right person. So can you think for yourself of any such moments when you have been persuaded or influenced by a story, or when you have been able to persuade or influence with a story that you created? I'd like you to take a minute to think of such moment in your own life. Are there moments that you do recollect? You know, some of the best storytellers who would have influenced you are filmmakers, politicians, people from the religious space, excellent orators and speakers, writers. These are powerful storytellers, ad makers, marketing professionals, news items, media. These are all the possible spaces from which you would have received, or you might have received, very powerful stories, from where you might have learned to give back very powerful stories. So just take a moment and think about those. Yeah.
Right. So I'm here. I've started even getting questions. How to become a storyteller. We are liking the term storycation and many more. So maybe we'll take it at the end.
Oh, sure, sure. Yes, that is certainly on my mind to talk about how to become a storyteller. I'm so glad you're excited and you're intrigued and piqued by the idea of storycation, and that you'd like to become a storyteller. Storytelling is a craft. Like any other craft, it can be learned, right? We'll talk about, certainly talk about that. A couple of quick points that I'd also like to make about why this works so well, right? The story works so well because it lets you vicariously experience something. What do I mean by a vicarious experience? A vicarious experience is one where you do not actually go through the experience, but yet you go through all the emotions of the experience. So we did not actually become butter makers. We did not become the merchant actually, but in our heart, emotionally, we experienced each of these characters in each of these situations. So we vicariously experienced. It is different from actually experiencing, right? Let me give two examples to explain that. I'm sure all of you in your childhood, okay, go back to your childhood. Did you enjoy listening to horror stories? Ghost stories? Yes.
Yes.
I'm sure there would have been that favorite aunt or bhaiya or grandma or grandfather, uncle who told horror stories, right?
Yes, always in every family.
Right? And how much we enjoyed that thrill of that ghost coming, killing, doing all those terrible things and going away. Now imagine if the ghost actually came into your house and all that actually happened to you. Would it be in any way thrilling or enjoyable? Not a single moment, right? We are enjoying the horror story only because it is a vicarious experience and it is not a real experience. There is that distancing. We are experiencing it, yet we know it's not actually happening. And that's what gives that thrill and that joy. Now, apart from thrill and joy, which is a nice, relaxing, and a good feeling, which allows people to receive, which is why stories work. The other thing in a story is, again, I'll give you an example of the vicarious experience working in a story. Um, so let's say your best friend has had a breakup and your best friend comes to you and is really sad and upset and crying or expressing his or her feelings, you can sit there and give suggestions, give advice, give a pat on the back and say, koi nahi yaar, or you can even laugh if you're a little insensitive, right? But would the same thing be possible if you had the breakup? You might even be able to see how it was such a good thing that your friend broke up with that person, God, she was just not right, or he was just not right, thank God. But you would not be able to see all that if you were the one who was going through a breakup, right? So what vicarious experience, a little bit of distance, what it gives is an ability to critically think about that same situation. And that's what you want to offer your audience. You want your audience to deeply connect through the story and yet have a little distance to be able to critically think and be convinced about the point that you're making, the persuasion, the influence that you are leading them to, right? This is what vicarious experience is, and this is one of the key trigger or the catalyst points of storytelling, which you can very beneficially, meaningfully, purposefully employ both for yourself and for your audience, for whoever is with you. Right. The very important question of how to become storytellers, let's quickly come to that. I know that theoretically there's so much we can understand. We could go on and on. I teach Storycation as a course. So there we go into the types of narratives and this and that, and so many more things. But let's quickly come to right now what we're looking at. How can we become better storytellers, right? I use the word better because all of us are storytellers. All of us are storytellers. Which one of you has not ever started a sentence like, you know what happened? Pata hai kya hua? And what follows after that is a story, right? So each of us is a storyteller already. Each of us has a style already. If we have to talk about how to become a storyteller, which is, professionally honing and learning the craft consciously, systematically, let me start with my favorite analogy, right? Let's say you want to learn how to swim. You can read 10,000 books on swimming, but can you remain dry and learn to swim? You need to jump in, get wet, get water into your mouth, and all of that struggle, hit your hands and legs and gasp for breath and slowly float and come and then learn. Similarly, with storytelling, you need to take the plunge. You need to tell stories. However, just like with swimming, right? We're not going to just go and jump in. We're going to go with a little preparation. In fact, for storytelling, I highly recommend a lot of preparation, right? So one of the most important things with storytelling is first, realize you are a storyteller. Realize you are a storyteller. Recognize your style. Recognize your style of storytelling. For these two things to happen, what you really need to do is observe very, very, very well. Observe yourself, observe others. As you keep observing yourself, as you keep observing others, you will slowly realize what kind of a storyteller are you? How do you like to tell your stories? What are the stories you like to tell? So this is really the foundation, okay, of the building. This is really the foundation to be able to know your own storytelling style, which works for you, right? And once you know your storytelling style, just hold on to it. Take it in with all of your self. It's own it up, right? Because that's you. Everybody else is taken, as that proverb goes, right? Everybody else is taken. You have only you to take. So just own up your style, whatever it may be. Just strengthen that style of yours. I remember in one of the workshops, we had a lady who was trying so hard. It was We were way into the sessions, and yet I found her totally struggling with storytelling. The moment she came and stood there, she would just mess up. So one day I said, Uzma, take a chair, just sit down and tell your story. Uzma sat down, and straight flow, she had this beautiful story that she narrated to us that day. Oh, missing your grandmother's stories. Oh, yes. Go back and ask your grandmother, and go ask your mother, and you start becoming your grandmother. You start going and telling stories, Abhishek. Right? We can bring back those days of grandma stories. Yes? In our own way, we can bring them back. See, if you miss those stories, that means it it stayed in your heart. And now through stories, you can stay in someone else's heart, right? Pankaj, you like the term storycation? Thank you, Pankaj. Yes, that's our registered trademark, and we really it has such a ring to it. We felt it just brought together communication and storytelling and all of it together, right? Yeah. So coming back to our points, um, Major Dr. Gulshan, God bless. Oh, sorry, the message is gone. I couldn't see it. Thank you, thank you. Best way to teach. Yeah, completely agree. All right, Ankur. Yes. So I'm quickly summing up the points about how to get better at storytelling. Observe, observe, observe. Observe yourself. Find your style and own up to your style. Strengthen that style of yours. And of course, practice, 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 and more practice, and practice, and practice. Practice in styles that work for you. For some people, standing in front of the mirror and telling might be a great way to practice their story. For some people, writing it out is great. And then for any of you, remember, storytelling is a performing art, it's telling. So part of your practice has to be telling out the story. So you read it from the book initially if you want to, if that makes you feel better. But finally, these are things that are told. So something that's told is not always the same as something that's written. So even if you write down, you have to write it for telling, right? So as part of your practice, as part of your preparation, you can write down the story. As part of your preparation, you can write down your story, you can tell it into the phone, you can tell it into the video camera, look at it again, listen to it again, give yourself feedback, share it with a couple of friends, not too many people whom you trust, one or two people whom you trust, who will be positive and supportive, who will give you honest but critical feedback, right? And then you practice and then you start telling. Start with telling a small audience, even one person is fine, two is fine. Slowly, slowly, as you get comfortable, as you get confident, you can grow the number of people you tell. But it has to start with preparation and practice, like any other art form, right? Like any other art form. And then tell, keep telling, keep telling, keep telling, keep telling. And as you tell, just like cycling, right? As you keep going, you're going to, and then you come back, and then you come back. Or maybe you fall down and you pick yourself when you come back. So just like that, even with storytelling, keep doing your course correction. Keep doing your course correction as you go along, you know, for which all your life you have to be an observer. To be a good storyteller, you need to be a good listener. Listening with your ears, listening with your eyes, listening with your skin, listening with your head, listening with your heart, listening in every possible way at all times. That has helped me the most. Even today, that's what helps me the most to keep learning and to keep growing as a storyteller. So these are very quickly points that I would say. Now, if you're wondering where to get stories, right? One good habit is to read. Reading is a great way. You have India. India is a land of stories. You know, in all my international travels, I always keep saying, in all my international travels, I always find, whether I've been in South Africa or Scotland or Indonesia, Iran, Austria, anywhere, any of the travels, people are so familiar with Indian stories. Ramayana, Mahabharata, Panchatatra, Katha, Sarit, Sagar, Jataka tales. we have so many. We are just full of stories. So it's a great starting point. A great starting point is stories here itself, right? Look up any of these stories. Go to books for stories. Go to websites that have archives of books, maybe. Amar Chitra Katha, Chanda Mama, Tinkle, Chacha Chaudhary. Start small, start simple, right? These are places to find stories if you're wondering that, oh, I don't have stories. Oh, you do, right? Another great place is your backyard, your own life. Your own life is full of stories. If you can pick and identify the interesting ones that happen to you or that happen to people around you, that's again a collection of your stories. So I hope these tips have been helpful in terms of how to create a successful marketing. Sorry, that was very quick. Could I see that again? How to create a successful Pooja or Sakshi? Is it possible to see that comment again? Or you can read it
I'll
out
read
to me.
it for you.
Yes,
I'll
yes.
read it for you. So it's a question from Siddharth. He's saying how to create a successful marketing plan with the help of storytelling. Any
Right,
suggestions or advice?
right. So like we started in the, like we mentioned in the very beginning, whatever number crunching, whatever statistics, whatever data and information is available to support and persuade your customers, right? Bring some soul, some data into that, some soul into the data through a story, which means using references of a strong image. Like they say, a picture can paint 1,000 words. Here in storytelling, we are painting the picture with words, right? So I would say find image, and a good exercise is to every day, spend, let's say whatever's the product, okay, product X. So um, X is like X is like a ship because X is like the sky, which lights up the whatever, So literally play with metaphors every day. And as you keep doing 4 5 metaphors every day, eventually you'll be able to zero in and you'll get better and polished at finding just the right image which clicks. So one is getting the right image. And then, of course, seeding in that nice little emotion and heart into that particular narrative. So one way I would say is go backwards. I would go backwards, take an ad. Let's take an ad that, we're all familiar with or we like very much. Cadbury ad, do you remember the Cadbury ad, which is, the girl bursts out dancing when the guy scores in the, I mean, it's of course a very old ad and a typical ad. Nevertheless, I'm using that reference to say that there is a moment that makes us all light up like that, right? When we hear that story. So in the entire marketing uh, plan, an accommodation for seeing the audience as eventually human beings who respond from their heart, right? I'd like to go back to the first story about the minivan. These guys had all the proof. They had all the research. They had all their friends and everybody supporting and saying, go for company A. The product was in fact more expensive, but they went and bought company B's product. And they got sold out just by an image, just by the emotion, right? Um, so the reason I'm not giving a specific action plan, but I'm giving you the premise. I'm giving you the premise is because according to the product, according to the market, it might change. But what we do need to remember is the audience, and to remember that eventually all of us function from emotions, right? So if your marketing plan can include a space for this, then we are talking of a stickable a memorable and emotionally respondable plan. Vis-a-vis something that may be technically very correct, very efficient, full of information, but it doesn't go beyond here, right?
Very well said, ma'am, because anything that touches heart always, grabs your attention.
Yeah,
So the connection, if you can make connection with your customer, I think your work is done.
right, right. On that note, again, I'm reminded of a proverb, okay? And it comes from a little story that once there was a white man who went to a small village in Africa, and he found all the people in the village sitting under the tree, surrounding one man. And that man was telling them stories, okay? So this white man thought, oh, these guys have not heard of television. So he brought a television down to the village, got it set up in the community center, switched it on, and showed the people that look, this box, it knows lots of stories. And he left. The white man came back after a month or so, and he went straight to the community center. It was empty, the TV was switched off. All the villagers were sitting all around the storyteller under the tree and listening to his stories. The white man came there and he said, hey, but that television knows many stories. And the villagers said, yes, the television knows many stories, but the storyteller knows us. So, whatever the marketing plan, whomever you wish to persuade or influence, you need to really know your audience, which comes back to observe, listen, listen with your ears, listen with your eyes, listen with your heart, listen with your mind, with your body, spirit, in every way. Once we listen, once we receive, then we can make the stories. We can make the stories that can influence. And knowing storytelling is so powerful. I'm sure we all will, but I would still like to urge you to use storytelling responsibly, because storytelling can also be used the other way around, right?
Blessing in disguise.
Yes, yes,
So, with this, I really love this one that storyteller knows us. So, that human touch and that emotional connect can only be created with the power of storytelling. Even now, when we are talking to, say, a student talking to a professor, or a younger school going student talking to the teacher, when they are actually touching each other's heart, that's when they start learning, or that's when they start actually with the business. Or of course, even the business proposals, like Siddharth has asked for a plan, so the plan should be touch the heart of your audience. So that's the
yes,
power of storytelling. Until now, Deepa ma'am, I used to think that storytelling is it's just storytelling, never thought of it as a performing art. So it's a real eye opener for us. It's wonderful.
right, right. Yeah, glad that there has been some perspective change. Storytelling is a performing art. Storytelling is a pedagogical tool in teaching. Storytelling is an approach, is a core approach in the corporate, in communications. So I have worked with the district court judges. I have worked with the heads of panchayats of drug abuse, for drug abuse. I have worked in the Chellapalli jail. So storytelling is, I'm just naming some of the few spaces. Storytelling is relevant in every space of our life, because we are constantly communicating and we're constantly persuading, influencing people in different ways for different situations, different contexts. And if we can bring in stories there to be able to reach, touch the heart, yes, to be able to just touch the heart, because that's what each of us is looking for eventually, you know. Like I was doing a session this morning for Ministry of Culture for the teachers, and one of the things the teacher said is, ma'am, if we watch a video, there is no eye contact when the teacher tells a story to the students, there's eye contact, right? So there are so many elements within a story, within the storytelling, which we can pick up and we can try and bring it in whatever we are communicating, however we are communicating. I'd like to end with a quotation. I think it's 1 hour, right? It's time for us to.
Yes.
Yes. I'd like to end with a quotation of Ursula Le Guin, who's a science fiction writer. She has a beautiful quote which says that there have been civilizations that did not have the wheel. There have been civilizations that did not have the wheel, but there has been no civilization that did not have storytelling. There has been no civilization that did not have storytelling. We're all inveterate storytellers. So let's tell our stories. Let's receive each other's stories and let's bring that in our communication is my sincere persuasion request, and I'm available. You are most welcome to connect with me. My name is Deepa Kiran. So you will find me on Insta as over to Deepa Kiran, on YouTube again as Deepa Kiran Storyteller. Yes, so it would be lovely to connect, and there are workshops, courses that happen to really explore this skill and this craft. Each of you can learn it. Thank you to the council. Wonderful work happening here with Creative Warriors and all of the other work. And thank you, Pooja. Thank you, W University, everybody. And thank you, fantastic audience. It was so nice receiving your questions, your responses, and engaging together like this. Thank you so very much. Wish
Thank
you
you,
best.
ma'am. But before we take your leave, on behalf of our council here, we'd like to offer you a certificate of appreciation, just a small token of respect for your time, for your dedication, for your work in storytelling and storycation, a new thing. Now I'm definitely going to use this word. I'm going to add storycation to my vocabulary and use it often. So we'll be sending this to you, and
Thank you so
so much for your time. It's a really pleasure having you here.
My
Thank you
pleasure.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you very
And
much.
guys, we'll be back from 21st. Now, after this, we'll be back on Monday, 4 p.m. with another session. And next week, we are doing a 5-day series on performing arts. I really wish I would know storytelling is a part of performing art. But nevertheless, it's always, we learn everything with every session. So, and I'm really glad to be a part of this. So thank you so much, everybody. Take care. Have a good time. Stay safe, and let's meet on 21st of February. And thank you, Deepa ma'am. Take care. I'm personally going to follow you and from our company as well. And we hope to get connected and work together in future
Would
as
love
well.
to do that. Would love to
Thank
do
you.